Imagine a world where the most terrifying monsters aren't hiding under your bed, but in plain sight. They walk among us, wear friendly faces, and could be someone you trust implicitly. Tonight, we delve into 3 true crime sagas, where the truth is so much stranger and far more chilling than fiction. These are stories of betrayal, obsession, and unimaginable evil, where the plot twists will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about the people around you. Our first story begins in Omaha, Nebraska, with David Crow, a 36-year-old auto repair shop manager trying to navigate the daunting world of dating after separating from his long-term partner. He was casually seeing Shana Liz Gola, a single mother of 2, when he met Carrie. Their first date went exceptionally well. Carrie was independent, intelligent, and lively, everything Dave enjoyed. But as they returned to his apartment that night, an unexpected encounter occurred. Shana Gola, the other woman Dave was casually seeing, stopped by without notice. The 2 women exchanged a brief glance. Dave didn't think much of it. Both women knew he wasn't looking for anything serious. Carrie spent the night, and Dave expected life to simply carry on. He had no idea what was coming next. The very next morning, November 13th, 2012, after Dave left for work, he received a truly bizarre text from Carrie. She abruptly proposed they move in together. Dave was stunned. This was completely out of character. They had only been casually dating for 2 weeks, and both had agreed they weren't seeking a serious relationship. When Dave politely but firmly declined, her tone flipped instantly. The texts that followed were laced with profanities, venom, and raw hatred. "Fine, I hate you. I'm dating someone else. I don't want to see you anymore. Go away." Dave's jaw dropped. How could the kind, funny woman he'd been with hours before turn so vicious, so quickly? Carrie vanished from his apartment that evening. Dave, unnerved, cut off contact, thinking he'd dodged a bullet. But Carrie's family was growing increasingly alarmed. Carrie, a devoted mother to her 14-year-old son Max, and very close to her own mother, Nancy Rainey, never returned home. She missed crucial family events, a relative's wedding, her own birthday, even Max's birthday. Instead, bizarre text excuses arrived. Nancy received a text claiming Carrie had taken a new job in Kansas. When Nancy tried to call, Carrie never answered. This was highly unusual. Nancy reported Carrie missing, but authorities initially dismissed it. The messages from Carrie's phone suggested she'd left voluntarily. An officer even suggested it wasn't uncommon for people with bipolar disorder, which Carrie had history with, to exhibit erratic behavior and take off. Nancy was frustrated. She knew her daughter wouldn't abandon her life without a word. For the moment, Carrie's disappearance was treated as a voluntary absence, not foul play. Meanwhile, Dave continued to receive an onslaught of harassing messages. One moment, they were lonely pleas. "We belong together, Dave." The next, chilling threats. "I will do what I can to make you suffer." He changed his phone number multiple times, but the messages always found him. Carrie, a computer programmer, seemed to have unlimited resources. She became a ghost, living in Dave's devices. Dave and Shana, the first woman he was seeing, began to grow closer, united by this terrifying situation. Shana claimed she, too, was receiving hateful messages from Carrie. One night, Shana called Dave in tears, her garage door vandalized with the words, "From Dave." The harassment escalated. Both Dave and Shana received emails full of threats whenever they spent time together. Then, one chilling night, a text popped up on Dave's phone. "I see you. You're sitting in your chair with your feet propped up wearing a blue shirt." It was exactly what Dave was wearing, exactly what he was doing. The stalker wasn't just behind a screen. They were watching him. By early 2013, the terror went beyond words. Dave spotted Carrie's Ford Expedition, the same SUV she'd driven to his shop, parked near his apartment, stalking him. Police examined it, finding a single fingerprint on a mint container inside, but it didn't match Carrie. It didn't match anyone in law enforcement database. It was as if Carrie had evaporated, leaving only angry digital echoes. Her son Max, receiving messages that sounded off from his mother on Facebook, tried to verify her identity by asking for his middle name and their dog's name. The account went silent. It became clear to Carrie's loved ones. The real Carrie was not behind these messages. Something was terribly wrong. The stalking intensified over 2013 and 2014. Dave's ex-girlfriend Amy even received threats. Someone tried to break into Dave's apartment. A brick was thrown through his window. His auto shop was vandalized. No one in Dave's life was safe. The obsession with Shana was particularly fierce. Dave received an email from Carrie with a picture of a woman tied up in a car trunk, threatening to kill Shana. He called Shana, thankfully unharmed. Then, a link to a fake obituary for Shana appeared. The most drastic incident came in August 2013. Shana Gula's house burned to the ground, tragically killing her pets. Investigators confirmed it was arson. Shana immediately blamed Carrie. Dave was horrified. He feared for his safety and sanity, even arming himself with a 9mm pistol. For over 2 years, Carrie existed as a vengeful phantom, tormenting them. Everyone believed Carrie Farber was unhinged, but the truth, when it finally emerged, would prove more twisted than anyone could have imagined. In 2015, with the harassment ongoing, Detective Ryan Avis and Jim Doy decided to re-examine the cold case. They approached it from two angles: Carrie alive or Carrie dead. Red flags appeared quickly. Shayna Lizgala's name kept popping up. Shauna had only briefly met Carrie in that hallway, yet she was supposedly the target of most of Carrie's wrath. Why would a brief acquaintance fixate so much on Shauna? The detectives began to suspect. Perhaps Carrie was never the stalker at all. Perhaps something terrible had happened to Carrie back in 2012, and the real perpetrator was working tirelessly to make everyone believe Carrie was not only alive, but completely insane. They revisited all the digital evidence. Crucially, back in 2013, both Dave and Shayna had willingly allowed police to dump the contents of their phones. The data had been untouched for years. Now, a digital forensic expert, Anthony Carver, combed through it with fresh eyes. What he found was stunning. On Shayna's phone backup, there were photos of Carrie Farver's SUV, taken a month before police found it. Shayna knew where Carrie's missing vehicle was long before the authorities. Even more damning, the mysterious fingerprint found in Carrie's SUV was finally matched. It was Shayna's fingerprint. In that instant, the narrative flipped. Shauna was not a victim. Shauna was impersonating Carrie. Piece by piece, evidence of Shayna's elaborate web of deception was uncovered. The terrifying photo of a bound woman in a trunk, emailed from Carrie, had been taken with Shayna's phone. A surveillance video uploaded under Carrie's name was traced back to Shayna's home IP address. Shauna had even used software to mask her IP and scheduled messages, allowing Carrie to send texts, even when Shauna was sitting right next to Dave, deflecting suspicion. For 3 years, Shauna had played the role of Carrie Farver, sending approximately 15,000 emails and 50,000 text messages in Carrie's name, a full-time job of obsessive torment. The most chilling revelation: Carrie Farver had been dead the entire time. Investigators now believed Carrie was murdered on the very day she disappeared in likely within hours of her last sighting at Dave's apartment. Proving a murder with no body would be a challenge. They needed a breakthrough, and Shauna herself provided one. In December 2015, as suspicions closed in, Shayna pulled a desperate stunt. She shot herself in the leg and called 911, claiming Dave's ex Amy Flora had ambushed her. It was a terrible attempt to frame Amy as the real stalker. Police immediately saw through it. The injury and story were inconsistent. Amy had an ironclad alibi. This backfired spectacularly on Shauna. With this incident, investigators convinced Shayna to let them download her phone again, under the pretense of investigating Amy's supposed harassment. Naively, Shayna agreed. The new data yielded more golden evidence. Logs of 20 to 30 fake email addresses Shayna had created using variations of Carrie's name, and the app she used to schedule future text messages. Detectives Doy and Avis, playing Shayna's game, convinced her they believed her and requested her help to incriminate Amy. Suddenly, Shayna began forwarding emails from Amy, confessing to shooting Shayna at the park. They pushed Shayna for more. One email from Amy mentioned that Carrie had been stabbed 3 to 4 times and put in a trash bag. Shayna grew frustrated when no arrest happened after that email. Police knew she was lying, but they needed details only the killer would know. Almost immediately, more confession emails from Amy arrived, mentioning Carrie had been stabbed in her car. Acting on that tip, they re-inspected Carrie's vehicle for a 3rd time. This time, peeling back the fabric from the front passenger seat, they found blood stains soaked in the foam padding. DNA testing confirmed it was Carrie Farver's blood. It had been preserved under the upholstery for years. The mountain of evidence was undeniable. Investigators executed a search warrant on Shayna's property. In her home, they found items belonging to Carrie, including a digital camera and camcorder taken from Carrie's residence. Dave recalled a tablet he had in storage. The memory card from that tablet had been in Shayna's phone around the time of the murder. On that memory card was a gruesome photograph: a decomposing human foot with a tattoo matching one of Carrie Farver. This was the closest thing to finding Carrie's remains. Armed with overwhelming evidence, police arrested Shayna on December 22, 2016, and charged her with first-degree murder. The trial in 2017 was staggering. Prosecutors painted Shayna as a diabolical mastermind, consumed by jealousy after Dave chose to date Carrie instead of her. Within days of that brief encounter in the apartment hallway, Shayna had allegedly ambushed Carrie, likely stabbed her to death in Carrie's own SUV. Then, she dedicated years to impersonating her victim. Dave was floored to learn that Carrie is not only not at fault, but she's been murdered, and Shayna, the person who I leaned on, was responsible. It's still hard to process. Shayna had deceived everyone, pretending to be his comfort and ally while secretly tormenting him. Because Carrie's body was never fully recovered, the case was built entirely on circumstantial evidence and Shayna's digital footprints. Shayna waived her right to a jury. The judge found the evidence compelling and found Shayna Lizgala guilty of murder in 2017, sentencing her to life in prison. The judge noted how utterly bizarre and chilling the entire case was. A nightmare made real. Astonishingly, Shayna still maintains her innocence, claiming she was framed and the real killer is still out there. But no one believes her. Carrie's family finally got clarity, though it was a devastating truth. Her mother, Nancy, and son, Max, were heartbroken, but grateful Carrie's name was finally cleared. In Carrie's honor, detectives and the forensic team established a scholarship in her name at a local community college. Carrie's mother wants her to be remembered as the fun-loving, talented, smart woman that she was. She was only 37 when she died. Our next case takes us to a misty spring dawn in Darden, Tennessee. April 13, 2011, 20-year-old Holly Bobo, a nursing student, was sipping coffee and studying at a kitchen table, dressed in her favorite pink blouse and jeans. Her parents had already left for work, leaving Holly and her older brother, Clint, alone in the quiet house. Shortly after 7:30 a.m., Clint heard the family dog barking furiously outside. He peered through the window and saw a man in head-to-toe camouflage talking with Holly in the garage. Holly had a boyfriend, Drew Scott, who often hunted and dressed in camouflage, so Clint naturally assumed it was Drew, but something was off. Holly appeared to be distressed, whispering and arguing. Clint thought they might be breaking up, so he decided to give them space. A short while later, Clint's mother, Karen, called. A neighbor had heard a scream. Karen's words sent a chill down Clint's spine. "Get the gun and shoot the man." "That's not Drew." Clint was confused. He was looking outside, and he still thought it was Drew. As he was on the phone, he watched Holly and the man walk into the woods behind the house. The man had one hand gripping Holly's arm. Clint's heart pounded. He quickly grabbed the gun and ran outside. In the garage near Holly's car, he found blood. In that instant, Clint realized something was terribly wrong. Holly and the man had vanished into the dense trees. This quiet, normal morning had exploded into a nightmare. Holly Bobo had been abducted at dawn, mere steps from her home. Clint frantically called 911. Law enforcement arrived quickly, but the search in the woods didn't begin for at least 2 hours. The community and law enforcement mobilized in a massive search. The blood by Holly's car suggested a struggle. Investigators believed Holly was taken as she headed to her car with her school lunch and books. Hundreds of volunteers combed the woods. Holly's lunchbox was found discarded on a rural road. Her school paper, cell phone, and SIM card were located separately, but nothing much came of these discoveries. Despite exhaustive efforts, Holly's disappearance made national headlines. Her smiling face was plastered on missing posters, offering a $250,000 reward. Fear gripped the close-knit community. As days turned to weeks, speculation swirled. Law enforcement didn't name suspects, but rumors filled the blanks. In emotionally charged cases, the closest person to the victim often falls under suspicion. Clint, who had seen the man lead Holly into the forest, was obviously a suspect. Whispers spread. Why hadn't he immediately recognized the danger? Was it possible he knew the abductor? Why did he decide to check the garage instead of rushing after Holly? Clint insisted he truly thought the man was Drew and was frozen by confusion. By the time reality set in, it was too late. He described the abductor as 5 feet 10 to 6 feet tall, 180 to 200 pounds, with long dark hair. Investigators publicly stated Clint was not a suspect. Next, police focused on Terry Britt, a convicted sex offender who lived nearby. Britt was known to prowl for victims. Detectives searched his property, vehicles, and put him under surveillance for months. But Britt had an alibi, and no initial evidence tied him to Holly. A frustrating dead end. Behind the scenes, other names bubbled up. Zach Adams, Dylan Adams, Shane Austin, and Jason Autry. These were men from the area known for criminal behavior and heavy drug use, deeply involved in meth and morphine. Holly's own mother, Karen, grimly remembered teaching Zach Adams and Jason Autry in elementary school. They were known troublemakers. Tips had come in early about these men, but their alibis initially checked out. Months passed, then a year. Still no sign of Holly. The Bobo family's torment was amplified by intense media attention. Holly's parents made tearful public appeals. Holly's disappearance became one of Tennessee's most infamous unsolved cases. It seemed Holly Bobo had vanished without a trace. But in truth, critical clues and witnesses were slowly coming together. A shocking, grisly picture of what happened was about to emerge. For more than 3 years, the town of Darden lived in limbo. Hope was hard to sustain. Then, in 2014, nearly 3 years after Holly vanished, investigators descended on Zach Adams' property. Zach was described as shaking with nervousness. He allegedly refused to give his cell phone number or allow law enforcement inside his home. After police left, he allegedly did suspicious things like vacuuming his car for an hour and hosing down a mattress outside. Zach's younger brother, John Dylan Adams, was arrested on an unrelated weapons charge. He eventually took a plea deal for no jail time in exchange for information. He claimed that on April 13, 2011, he had gone to Zach's house and saw his brother Zach dressed in camouflage. Along with Jason Autry and Holly Bobo, Zach had allegedly told him he had recorded a video of him sexually assaulting Holly. Finally, an arrest was made. Soon after, more arrests followed. Zach Adams and Jason Autry, another associate. Shane Austin, was allegedly present during the crime, but he cut a secret immunity deal in exchange for cooperation. However, when he was accused of not being truthful, the deal was revoked. In 2015, Shane Austin tragically committed suicide. While no clear motive was confirmed, some speculated it was due to guilt or fear. As the gruesome allegations came out, the community's worst fears were confirmed. Holly had likely been attacked and killed shortly after being abducted. But where was she? The suspects weren't talking about the most important detail. On a warm September day in 2014, two hunters searching for ginseng in a remote wooded area in a neighboring county stumbled upon a large human skull lying on the ground. The skull had a bullet hole through the back. Nearby, investigators found ribs and teeth. Dental records and DNA testing soon confirmed the devastating truth. These remains were Holly Bobo's. After 3 excruciating years, Holly's family finally had proof. Her death was ruled a homicide by gunshot. Over 2015 and 2016, investigators gathered forensic evidence, witness statements, and confessions. The horrifying events of Holly's last hours gradually came to light, primarily through the testimony of one man willing to speak, Jason Autry. The full truth was almost too awful to believe. According to testimony and evidence, on the early morning of April 13, 2011, Zach Adams, high on drugs, allegedly decided to kidnap Holly Bobo. Autry suggested the motive might have involved a meth-related dispute, though this is uncorroborated. Zach was not alone. His brother Dylan Adams, Shane Austin, and Jason Autry were all implicated. Jason Autry testified in graphic detail. After Holly was dragged into the woods, she was taken to a property, possibly Zach's home. There, Holly was allegedly sexually assaulted by the entire group. Holly was terrorized and restrained. At some point, she suffered a head injury from blunt force, evidenced by trauma on her skull. Believing Holly might already be dead, Zach and Jason loaded a body, wrapped in a blanket, into Zach's pickup truck. Jason Autry initially thought the rolled-up bundle was a drug dealer they'd killed for money. Then Zach looked at him and chillingly said, "That's Holly Bobo." Jason, horrified, nevertheless agreed to help dispose of the body in exchange for drugs. They drove to a spot by the Tennessee River, planning to dismember her body and dump it to prevent animals from consuming the remains. A gruesome, horrific plan fueled by meth-fueled madness. But as they unrolled the blanket by the water, Holly moved. She was still alive. Jason saw her foot twitch and heard a muffled cry. He shouted in shock, "The bitch is still alive." In a panic, knowing Holly could identify them, Zach Adams grabbed his gun. As Jason stepped away as a lookout, Zach shot Holly in the back of the head, killing her instantly. A boat was heard approaching, startling the men. They abandoned their plan. Autry later said Adams told him they threw her out somewhere. Over the next few days, guilt and paranoia set in among the co-conspirators. Fearing loose ends, Zach even tried to enlist Autry to murder his own brother, Dylan, because Dylan wouldn't stop talking about the crime. Autry pretended to go along with it, with no intention of adding another murder to his tally. These conversations, along with Dylan Adams' statements to investigators, became key parts of the prosecutor's case. Holly's abduction wasn't a work of a lone predator, as many assumed. It was a group of local young men who decided to commit an unthinkable act. The early suspects, initially dismissed, were the culprits all along. By the end of the trial, Zach Adams was found guilty of kidnapping, rape, and murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison plus 2 consecutive terms of 25 years. Zach reportedly showed no remorse. John Dylan Adams entered an Alford plea in 2018, receiving 15 to 35 years. Jason Autry received a lighter sentence due to his cooperation, though he later bizarrely recanted parts of his testimony. As of now, the perpetrators remain behind bars. The Bobo family, deeply scarred, works to keep Holly's memory alive. A portion of Highway 6. Our final story takes us to the seemingly idyllic town of Townsend, Massachusetts in the autumn of 1986. DeBow and family, a father and his 2 teenage daughters, Tina and Karen, began noticing odd occurrences in their home. Objects would disappear and reappear. The TV switched channels on its own, or turned off and on. Strange noises filled the nights. Frank, the father, initially blamed his daughters, dismissing it as overactive imaginations. "You girls need to stop watching scary movies before bed," he'd say. But the disturbances escalated. One evening, the family came home to find their bathroom had been used. A chill crept through their spines. Frank began searching the house. What he found was more shocking and horrifying than he could ever imagine. Less than a mile away, in late 1987, lived the Gustafson family. Priscilla and Andrew, their 2 young children, Abigail and William, and Priscilla pregnant with their 3rd. They were a beloved, wholesome family, building a life in this peaceful community. Their colonial home sat on a quiet street. They too noticed items disappearing and reappearing. Cordless phones, cable boxes. Some were never seen again. They reported them stolen. They noticed odd noises, an overall strange feeling, but they were none the wiser to the horrifying event that would soon unravel. On December 1, 1987, a cold Tuesday afternoon, Townsend police received a frantic call. Andrew Gustafson had arrived home from work around 5:30 p.m. to a scene of utter devastation. He'd tried reaching Priscilla all day, which was highly unusual. He rushed home, stepped inside, and his whole world collapsed. In the master bedroom, he found Priscilla's lifeless body on the bed, bound with rope, gagged with a pillow over her head, soaked with blood. She had been shot twice in the head at close range. There were also signs of vicious sexual assault. Andrew was petrified. He couldn't bear to search for the children. "I was too afraid of going to look for my children because I was afraid I'd find them dead," he later said. He stumbled out of the house and called the police, numbed with dread. When officers arrived, his fears were confirmed. In separate bedrooms, they discovered the small bodies of Abigail and William. Each child had been drowned in a bathtub. Abigail had also suffered blunt force trauma to her head, indicating she tried to fight back. A veteran Sergeant Latta quietly said, "It looked as though Abby had fought to stay alive until the end." A family of 4, plus the unborn baby, destroyed in one afternoon. The town of Townsend was in shock. So, who could have done this? Let's go back to the Bowen house, because the person they saw would be the same person who destroyed the Gustafson family. At the Bowen house, the situation reached a terrifying climax in December 1986 that night. Someone emerged from a hiding spot in the walls while Frank and the girls searched their home, with his face painted, wearing a wig and a hairy coat to appear monstrous. The young man confronted the family with a hatchet and a wrench in hand. This man was Daniel Lalonde. He was the reason they were hearing things in the walls and attic, why things were going missing, why the TV turned off and on. Daniel had been sneaking in and out of the Bowens' house for weeks, getting bolder each time. He corralled Frank, Tina, Karen, and a visiting friend into a bedroom at gunpoint, a real-life horror movie. Tina, the older daughter, who had chillingly gone on a date with Daniel not long before, managed to keep her wits about her. When Daniel was momentarily distracted, Tina bravely leapt out of the second-story window and ran for help. Police arrived minutes later, but Daniel Plant had vanished. They searched the house and discovered an astonishing sight. Behind the cupboard and inside the walls were cramped crawl spaces where Daniel had been hiding. The Bowens fled their home, traumatized. 2 days later, Frank returned home and saw someone in the window. He called police again. On the wall, officers found threatening messages left by Daniel. "I'm still here, come find me." One was written in magic marker, another with a knife stabbing through a family photo. Another message warned, "I'm going to kill you all." This message was true. Daniel was still in the house. Police found him curled up in a narrow space behind a panel, hiding like a human spider. Officers hauled the bizarre, deranged teenager out and arrested him. The town breathed a sigh of relief. The ghost was captured. But the relief was short-lived. Daniel Lalonde was charged for the Bowen break-in and threats. Because he was a minor, he was only held in a juvenile facility. In October 1987, less than a year later, Daniel's mother took out a mortgage on her house to bail him out, paying $10,000 to spring this monster from custody. The 17-year-old was released back into the community, completely unsupervised, with his criminal trial still pending. The Bowens had understandably left their home. The quiet neighborhood was unaware of the danger that lurked. Daniel Lalonde was free, and his dark desires had only grown. This time, his decisions would be irreversible. This is when he went to the Gustafson house. After the horrific crimes, police were looking for him again. 2 days after the murders, a local woman, Lynn McGovern, reported seeing something unsettling. She returned to her house in the same neighborhood and felt someone was inside. She flagged down an officer, and together they entered, only for a wide-eyed young man to leap out and sprint into the forest. This was Daniel Lalonde. He had been moving house to house, sheltering from the manhunt. He attempted a carjacking, forcing a woman at gunpoint to drive, but she bravely jumped out of the moving car. He fled again on foot. The chase ended later that evening when officers found him huddled in a dumpster behind a lumberyard. Lalonde was finally caught for good. At Leland's trial in 1988, the full, macabre narrative emerged. Lalonde had stalked the Gustafsons' home in much the same way he did the Bowens, lurking, breaking in, stealing small items, possibly even watching the family without their knowledge. On December 1st, he broke in while Priscilla was out. He was upstairs when Priscilla returned home with little Billy around 1 p.m. Normally, he claimed, he would have escaped. But this time, he decided not to run. Instead, he confronted Priscilla with a gun. He tied her to the bed and cruelly locked her toddler's son in the closet, so the boy wouldn't interfere. Then, he proceeded to sexually assault Priscilla. After the assault, he ended her life by shooting her twice in the head. Hearing the commotion, little William likely cried out from the closet. Lalonde, now done with Priscilla, turned his attention to the children. He led William to the upstairs bathroom and drowned the helpless 5-year-old in the tub. As Lalonde was getting ready to leave, 7-year-old Abigail came home from school. She walked in the door expecting to see her mom, but instead found a nightmare. This brave second grader scratched, kicked, and punched, but the 17-year-old overpowered her, inflicted a head injury to subdue her, and then drowned her in the bathtub downstairs. In the span of about 20 minutes, he had annihilated the Gustafsson family. The trial was swift. Daniel Planter was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. The judge imposed 3 consecutive life sentences, a symbolic stacking to ensure he never tasted freedom again. Massachusetts didn't have the death penalty at the time, or surely he would have been a candidate. Lalonde showed zero remorse during the entire trial. The haunting truth seems to be that Daniel Lalonde derived pleasure from terrorizing others. Andrew Gustafsson was devastated beyond words. At the funeral for Priscilla, Abigail, and William, he sobbed through a eulogy, then largely withdrew from public view. In a rare interview years later, he revealed he kept 2 wedding rings on his finger, his original from Priscilla and one from a new marriage he eventually entered, as a way to honor both past and hope for the future. Andrew did remarry in 1989, finding a kind woman named Carol who helped him rebuild his life. But Carol attested that Andrew was still plagued by nightmares of the murder until the day he died of cancer in 2014. To this day, Daniel Lalonde still rots behind bars. These stories, as horrifying as they are, reveal a chilling truth. Reality can unravel slowly, and then all at once. A woman vanishes, but her messages keep coming. A quiet college student is led into the woods and never returns. A family home seems haunted, but the truth is eerier than imagined. And in each case, the simple beginning gives way to an ending you could never expect. It forces us to ask, how well do you really know the people around you? The neighbor, the new date, even the family friend. The most dangerous twists are often hidden in plain sight. What do you think about these cases? Which twist shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have a true crime story you'd like me to cover, share it there too. Until then, stay safe out there. Thank you for watching.